Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is the 5th day of February 2025, and welcome to our show today. Hope you're having a great day so far. It's still winter here in Michigan, and we're still seeing snow and such, but I have great hope that we're going to warm up here fairly soon, which is kind of nice. It's actually been a pretty normal winter for us, maybe a little light, but at any rate, we're going to go right to Liberty Essentials this morning with our wonderful panel, Bill Mohr, Karen the Riveter, and Ralph the IT guy. And shortly after that, it'll be Curtis Clark coming back on again today talking about county home rule. And I don't know much about this, but I'm learning. So anyhow, morning guys, how you doing?
Morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing? First off the bat, everybody needs to congratulate Bill because Bill had a son born this week, and congratulations to you. You are no longer alone in a sea of women.
Did we say huzzah?
Yeah, roughly.
Hooray!
Slightly less outnumbered.
Pull up a picture here. I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not, but that's good grief. I'm gonna get rid of that blur. I don't know why I have that blur on.
Yeah, it's got to be in your background settings. There you go. All right, now let's see if we can see your baby.
Oh, I don't know if you can or not. There he is.
So that's Bill Mohr, number 3, the third.
Yep.
That's he's so cute. Well,
I can see enough of him to say he's not ugly. So there you go.
Congratulations to you and your whole family. I bet the girls are all very excited.
Oh yeah, they've been having a blast.
I'll bet they got a baby doll to play with, which is kind of fun, you know. All right, when you're a little girl, it's like taking care of kitties, puppies, or babies is like a huge deal. So
yeah, I wouldn't know much about that.
Yeah, well, we'll just clue you in here. How's that? So the funny thing is, okay, so this morning we get on and we're talking just for a few minutes beforehand while I was uploading my TikTok video this morning, and so this is what I wrote this morning, and it's on the TikTok video, but I'm going to go ahead and say it again because I think it needs to be said. The basis of all decisions right now is a decision with roots in faith. It starts with who is in charge. If a person doesn't get this one key decision right, everything else crumbles into chaos. There's a lot of speculation out there, but most of it is engineered distraction coming from both sides. If you want peace during a storm, it doesn't rely on our own understanding. That's a false sense of security. It is, however, it is a decision of faith based on cumulative evidence. The key decision of which every other perception is relying on is this: who is in control? If that question can't be answered, then no other suppositions or assumptions matter. Based on the evidence, the good guys are in control, directed by God. The show we are watching is being played out, is a reversal of every evil we have become accustomed to. Palestine, about 24 miles long. Put this in perspective, people. Israel is the size of New Jersey, and we have poured trillions of dollars into Israel and Palestine to fix the problem, and we just keep piling up the bodies and increasing the rubble pile. Why? Because the USA has been using this as a money laundering excuse as we fund both sides of the problem and make the globalists richer. So trust God no matter what comes. Trust the plan. It is a decision based on faith and who is ultimately in control. And Bill gets on and we're talking about this, and he's like, what's the chances that I had, because we don't talk about it before, 2 minutes before we're on, what's the chances that I had Israel and Palestine on my screen? I'm like, probably pretty good. It's amazing how often we are all on the same page in this, with this group right here. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, at least on the same subjects, right?
Yeah. So my thoughts on this are, though, that we cannot take the narrative at face value because we don't know what's going on. If the good guys are in control, which I believe is true, they're going to be broadcasting their plans. They're not going to tell anybody what's going on. And a lot of times they put up something that's a distraction in order to keep us, both the good guys and the bad guys, from seeing what they're really doing. And I don't hold it against them because we are the ones that created the problem out there by apathy, lack of involvement, and not taking our responsibilities seriously over time. It's not all our fault. It's been a cumulative effect of generations. But the point being is that if there's anyone stepping up to fix this that actually has good intentions, we need to help them and not be firing at them with every offhanded comment we have. But we should be evaluating the situation for what it is so that we're not stupidly, blindly following along like sheep to the slaughter, no matter whose face is on what's happening. How's that for an evaluation?
That's pretty fair. You know me well, Donna, and most everybody else here. I kind of hold the alternate view amongst other things, because I can take things at face value, and I can also look at things deeper in the motivation and intent, especially when things come to pass. Then it becomes clear what was being done or why things were being done that way.
Sounds like future proofs past.
Sounds like what?
Future proofs past.
Yeah,
and all my frog friends go, yay.
Yeah, that's kind of the way things go. I mean, you can't deny the facts, but you also can't overlook you can't overlook lawlessness. You know, the phrase the ends justify the means, right? Mm. That's not how we are to operate.
I hate that phrase.
I do too.
So when you see means being done that are clearly lawless, or even being talked about rather that are clearly lawless, they need to be called out, because whether or not what is being said is intended to be used as said, each one of us is going to give an account for everything we do, and not only that, but everything we say as well, right? So I take words as they come, and then take the action as I see it happen later. So the whole, and I think we did a show on this sometime early last year as well, not necessarily Israel and Gaza together, but Israel as a whole, on the scriptural basis for what we should be looking at as far as the modern day nation of Israel. How many of us here have read the book by Pepe, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine? I
have not.
You ever read that? That's a really good book, and I would encourage everybody to read it once. Whether or not you agree with it, that's going to be up to you. But just look through there, because there's a lot of history and facts as to what has happened over there in the last close to a century now, as far as people being displaced out of their own nation.
Who's it written? Oh, yeah, okay, Pepe.
Yeah. I think the first name is Ian, IIAN.
Yes.
I don't know how it's actually pronounced, but
all right.
Yeah, it's one of the things I look at over history's time. There's this modern misconception of the nation of Israel that we see, this political nation of Israel, that it has existed basically forever, using the promises given to the patriarch Abraham and justification of it. And it's not true in that sense. The modern day nation of Israel didn't show up until 1948, shortly after World War II, right?
Well, and it was engineered by Britain from the Balfour Declaration previous to that. So what was the plan?
Yeah, and not only that, but the funding of it. You look at the funding of it and how it all came to pass, and you will see some major globalist players, including America, that was all part of that, right? And you can even push forward the most recent distraction when we had, and it's still going on, but the most recent distraction a couple of years ago when it all started, the wars over there, when these so-called Palestinians were flying over on like little ultralight carts, right? And basically walking into what we know as Israel's Iron Dome and attacking them, right? There's a whole bunch of questions surrounding that as well. When you look at
nobody buys that nonsense. I mean, it's like that's kind of nonsense, all right.
Yeah, that just doesn't happen over there, right?
Right.
You look at the security that they have in place of that land, and you just can't, right? I don't care who it is, even without the security, you just can't do that. It doesn't work. But that whole distraction, I forgot where I was going with that. Anyway, that whole distraction got everybody's eyes on there, right? And there's this misconception that they rightfully own the land over there, and that they've been there for thousands of years. But if you know anything about history gets rewritten every so often, right? The victors are the ones who write the history of the wars. And when you look back at it, you don't have to go back very far. The early 1900s, and all throughout the 1800s and 1700s, you can pick up any decent Bible and find out that if it has maps in the back, you will find that area of land listed as Palestine, the whole thing, right? It wasn't named Israel. It has never been named Israel until 1948, right? Israel has never been a nation, even when they were God's covenant people. Israel was given as the name for the people who were God's fighters, right? Those who would fight on the side of God. So they were never a nation as we know nations today, but rather they were just a select group of people who happened to live in Palestine, right? So we have this disconnect in modern day thinking that the nation of Israel is in fact the same thing that we talk about as the people of Israel, right? And it's not the case. If you read through the ethnic cleansing in Palestine, you'll find out that all of that for the majority was to push the occupants of Palestine, the Palestinians, out from their land, right? It was a displacement of the people to establish the modern day nation of Israel. That's just a little bit of background.
I believe Israel paid them to leave too.
Oh, they did more than pay them.
But I mean, not only did they, I mean, there was incentives to leave.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like if you don't, we're going to kill you.
That's another one.
So, I mean, it's all government by force, right? That's all government is a force that means to conquer. So moving on into a little more modern news, because this just happened to come across my desk, and anybody that knows me knows I don't watch the news. I don't care about it. There's one pizza place I stop at for lunch occasionally in Grand Rapids that has Fox News playing every once in a while, right? So I get like a half hour of news, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, right? And that's only because I want to sit down and eat my pizza and not sit in my truck. Other than that, I don't get any information unless it's sent my way by somebody who I know or trust. But this one came across, and I had to look it up because it ran all over Facebook real quick. A lot of conservatives are talking about it, and you know, the groups that we would call liberals today, or the left, which doesn't really exist. They're all taking the opposite sides of it. But America has always been, at least in my lifetime, has always been a promoter of peace with Israel, right? Peace in the Middle East, right? I can go back and I can listen to Reagan and Carter, especially talk about that. So I don't know how far back that goes. I really don't care. I'm just focused on what's going on currently.
Doesn't matter. They suck at it after we poured trillions of dollars in it. Nothing's happened except for bodies and more rubble.
Yep. Unconstitutionally, by the way. They have no right to give that money out to another nation. And that happens all the time. Every administration in my lifetime has given away billions of dollars to whatever they want to do, right? Here's another point. Everybody should know by now that almost every congressman has a fund from AIPAC, right? Which is basically an Israel First political action committee, right? that dumps in tens of thousands of dollars per congressman to sway them to vote for certain legislation that comes through, namely if it's regarding Israel, right? They kind of control the narrative when it comes to that. I only know of one personally that does not, and I can't vouch for all of them, but the majority of them that I have seen have all taken money from AIPAC.
I think it's Massey hasn't taken it, and I don't think that Gates has taken it.
Yeah, Thomas Massey was the one that I knew of. I didn't know of anybody else, but
yeah, I don't think Matt Gates has taken it either.
So, I mean, everybody for the most part there in DC, the District of Criminals, is being funded by a foreign entity guided by a foreign nation who, in my humble opinion, should not be called an ally, but rather should be called an enemy of this union. And there's other reasons for that. When you look at 9/11 specifically, right? There are numerous ties to the modern day nation of Israel through 9/11. Some very clear ones as well. It's never as they say it is, right? Donna, you know that. Karen, Ralph, we all know that. It's never as they say it is when they come out and specifically tell you these people are the reason for this happening, right? Well, you can almost rest assured it is never those people, but rather they have to create a problem and then pin it on somebody so that they can fulfill their agenda in going after them for whatever reason, right? 9/11 was a clear instance of that. And I think that woke up a lot of people within a decade after 9/11. They started seeing the ties to all that, and they started asking the proper questions. And that's another reason why I see things that are going on and I see things that are being said. And I think a lot of it is cover for that, to get the people to quit asking some of those hard questions. Now, other people would say differently, but that's just the way I see it. Certain things go on and they constantly have distractions and pushes and certain narratives and agendas that they use to keep people mentally following a certain thought process to get them to accept the little changes that they want to put in place, right? And who's in control of that? Whatever globalist and political puppet you want to name, right? They all have their ties in one way or another.
I think it's your intelligence organizations. So, you look at Mossad and CIA and GCHQ and such, they're indistinguishable. And they literally are just pulling crap all over the globe.
Yeah. And those are all funded by the CIA. Everybody should understand that the CIA's sole purpose is to destabilize nations.
Well, what's really interesting, and it's come out this week with the cutting the funds from USAID. USAID had $50 billion budget, which is more than what the CIA had. According to the things that I've seen, their budget is larger. So honestly, it's all these aid things that are going across the planet where we never solve anything because it never gets to the people. The goal is not ever achieved. So why would we fund them?
Yeah, it's theft, guys. It's just theft of the American people.
CIA is using that USAID was using the CIA, or they're kind of working together. But don't look at USAID, look at the CIA, because they're the bad guys. No, they're all the bad guys.
Yep. Yeah. And you had brought it up when I think in your TikTok this morning you actually said it, that they use all of these to funnel money back into their own pockets, right? This is another one of those. As we talk about Israel, you understand how many hundreds of billions of dollars or trillions, I don't know the amount, that has been sent over to Israel. And I just mentioned AIPAC, right? Well, where does that money all go? It all gets funneled right back through via these little political committees, right back into the pockets of those who sent it over there in the first place, right? We saw it happen in Ukraine. It happens, I'm going to say, in every nation that we send money to. I don't see any constitutional authority or lawful process to send money to another nation. So if there's not, then there has to be a background motive behind it. You said, yeah, that's a perfect example.
You said
that was kind of highlighted in the news.
I like that. During the years, it's a USAID. It was School for CIA Agents. Its director told me, and this is from George Cotter, a Christian minister who worked in charity work in Africa and elsewhere. During these years, I attended a course given by USAID and on how to write project proposals, and I studied USAID's practices. Around this time, I learned that its administrator, John Gillian, had said that the agency had served as sort of a graduate school for CIA agents. At the time, aid field offices were infiltrated from top to bottom with CIA people, he said. It was pretty well known in the agency who they were and what they were up to. The idea was to plant operatives in every kind of activity we had overseas, government, volunteer, religious, and every kind. Bam, that's what it is.
Yep. So in the news now, just recently we had Donald Trump had a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, right? That criminal that's over there. Mm-hmm. One interesting thing about Netanyahu is he was one of the ones who the people over there in Israel absolutely hated during the COVIDs, during the entire pandemic, because he was pushing the same nonsense, even more so that our government was trying to push on us, right? Well, it's no different. He's a criminal. He should be held accountable for it, right? But nonetheless, we have Trump and Netanyahu stand up in front of a press conference, and we talk about this chaos going over there between Israel and Gaza again, okay? And here's where I get concerned a little bit, right? I don't fear anything that goes on there. Understand that. Donna, you had mentioned it, that you just live comfortably right where you're at, right? I don't fear any of this, and I certainly am not going to let it affect my day-to-day decisions. But we're talking about what's going on over there, and Trump had said something interesting. He said that the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, right? Or rather, he even talked about a long-term ownership of it. He says we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site, and get rid of the destroyed buildings. Okay. I'm just going to read off a couple of quotes during this. He had said that we're going to create an economic development that will supply unlimited number of jobs and housing for the people of the area. He said, do a real job, do something different. We should go to other countries of interest. Listen to this, because I'm sure if Biden or Obama or Clinton or anyone else would have said this, the people would have been in an uproar. Okay. Listen to what was said here. We should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts. And there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. It could be numerous sites, or it could be one large site. What does everybody's mind go to when they hear that? Anybody?
Sounds like reservations.
Sounds like reservations. My mind immediately went to what happened during the Hitler regime in World War II. Going to other countries, right? And displacing the people there and setting them up in specific areas, then known as concentration camps, right? As our history tells us. But that was what was being said there.
Well, it's already a kind of a concentration camp because the people aren't free to leave now.
Yeah. But understand that they're Palestinians living in Palestine. they have a right to be there, and they have a right to protect themselves from any outside threat that would seek to annul that or to remove them. Right. Let's go on. A couple more quotes out of that. He said, but the people will be able to live in comfort and peace, and we'll make sure something really spectacular is done. They're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like the civilization of wonderful people has had to endure. The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. Right? It's like forcing peace on a nation that wants war. And I don't think Palestinians want war, really. That seems to be the nation of Israel's motivation. They are heavily war funded in that sense, namely war funded by America, mind you, since we just talked about sending a bunch more guns over there to help out, right? Here we talk about peace, yet we're going to send guns. I don't know. I'm just pointing it out. He said, I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I have spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. He continued, everybody I have spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. History, as you know, just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal, and I don't want to be cute, but don't want to be a wise guy. But the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so magnificent.
See, I laugh because I think Trump exaggerates, and he points out, I don't mean to be cute. Yeah, it's exactly what he's doing. He is exaggerating and saying something so ridiculous. He fully expects a big reaction from a lot of people on every side. And how they're going to react, in what form they're going to react, what alternate solutions they're going to react, is going to make everybody turn their eyes in that direction and say, wait a minute, what is this thing? Everybody who has been ignoring the Palestine, Gaza, Hamas, all of that thing, are looking over and going, well, what is the history of this Palestine? And that's exactly what you're doing, Bill. You're explaining some of the history that you've learned so that people can start to grasp an understanding of the history, because you can't move forward if you don't understand the history over there. I'm one of those people who's just been like, I don't know. It's so confusing. I don't know what the truth is. I don't know who's who. And it's not any of my business. I don't live over there. It's been easy for me to sit over here and kind of ignore it. But now everybody's looking at it. The same thing happened with Greenland. I want to buy Greenland. Like, this is ridiculous. But what is it doing? It's making the people of Greenland go, you know what? Maybe we don't have to live the way we've been living. We don't have to have overlords. And it may be that simple, or it may be complex. I think with Israel, Palestine, Gaza, that whole thing is very complex. But I think sometimes he says something that's completely outrageous. To me, the fact that Netanyahu was standing right next to him when he was doing all this is very interesting. But I'll stop now. I don't know that you were done reading. I just felt compelled to jump in there and explain why I was laughing so hard.
Well, I mean, look at when President Trump was in charge in his first presidency, and there was we didn't have any wars. And then the first day Biden gets in, he bombs Syria. First day one. And the fighting has continued ever since then. So I'm kind of curious to see what the strategy is behind this.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes back to that question of who is in charge. The past proves out that there was peace for those 4 years. And he went and he stood by every world dictator, bad guy that you could imagine. And there was peace. He talked to them. He danced. He had the sword dance in Saudi Arabia for God, for gosh sakes, and all of that stuff that was happening across the globe. So I'm kind of sitting back right now and watching this and trying to figure out what's going on behind it. But the point being is that they aren't going to broadcast exactly what they're doing, but it sure is prompting all of us to study and know the law and understand how it's supposed to work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I don't understand where we get the idea that during his first 4 years of presidency that there were no wars. I understand that the purpose of it was there were no new wars. We didn't entangle ourselves in anything new. However, if you go back and look, especially in some of the public releases from the Air Force, that during that term of presidency, I mean, we still continued the war in the Middle East. We still had soldiers out there. We still had troops all over the world. So we were still occupying illegally territories that didn't belong to us. And not only that, but it was shown that during that 4 years, we had dropped more bombs on the Middle East and Somalia specifically, right? We devastated a huge portion of Somalia while Trump was in office. So I hear that thrown around a lot, but though we didn't enter anything new, his administration and that military at the time had dropped more bombs than Obama's administration before him.
I would also argue that technically none of them have been wars because they weren't properly declared through Congress.
There you go.
Oh, technicalities, Ralph.
Here, Ralph, with facts.
Yeah, them little stubborn things you keep throwing out there. Yeah, you are correct. They have not been constitutional wars.
Well, and we're not supposed to have a standing army. The only one that's supposed to be standing in at all times is the Navy, and that's to protect the borders.
Yep.
I kind of tend to think too that with Greenland, part of the strategy there, I think, was actually to get people to look at Denmark.
Yep.
I didn't look at Denmark at all. What happened in Denmark?
Denmark has had a considerable amount of influence on world events and several bad things happening. And a lot of people were ignoring Denmark completely until they started looking at Denmark more closely because of its association with Greenland.
I had a friend who was her dad was a diplomat from Denmark, and she spent quite a bit of time teaching me, and this is years ago, on the dynamics there. There's a company called Tvind, TVIND, who has a global presence, and they also have schools and such down in Africa. Whenever I hear somebody saying, oh, they've got schools somewhere like Oprah and everybody else, I immediately go to child trafficking. I really do. I have no faith that these organizations are running anything clean anymore. I used to be naive enough to believe that, but I just don't anymore because there's been so much trust that's been broken. But they have quite a hand in the global logistics scene. And I think that's something for everybody to look into, because if you go back to Epstein's Island, Ghislaine Maxwell and such, her husband, last name is Borgerson, I believe. He owned a company that was in charge of 98% of the container traffic, of tracking the container traffic in the world. Now, whoever controls the logistics and the tracking of the traffic can make things appear and disappear at will. And then you look at the port systems that we have, that only 2% of anything coming in the United States is open and inspected. We have no idea the dark hole of despair that this logistics network is involved in. We have no idea. There's glimpses of it at times, but I think it's something to look into, and look into some of these companies and such.
And then as far as Israel and Palestine are concerned, who has the rights to the land, as far as, who was there first. Well, maybe we should go back to the Canaanites and the Philistines. To a certain extent, both groups have kind of adopted the practices of the Canaanites. So maybe we've just returned back to Canaanites fighting Canaanites at this point.
Well, and look at the canal, the Ben Gurion Canal that they're trying to build. That there's a lot of questions that need to be asked, and because it's such a theater. I mean, this is such a theater that we are not getting transparent answers for that. It comes back to, once again, seeing things that are outside of our control at this point in time, and going to God with prayer, and also having some faith that the good guys are in control.
Yeah, I tend to take more of an isolationist view on that, and that it is not. It's not something that we have any reason to be involved in that conflict. That as far as, yes, there's reasons you could justify for it now, but none of them are constitutionally allowable.
Cut the funding and you stop all the problems. If there's no money in it, you are going to see the corruption and the criminality drop. And that goes from politics to other countries, to the economic corporatocracy we have going on, that because they're the ones that are driving it. BlackRock, Vanguard, Arabella, State Street, all of them cut the funding, and they stop placing the politicians. They stop, selling into the military industrial complex. We stop the bases all over the world. It all has to do with the funding, and that's the executive branch. I don't care what the legislature, approves. It's the executive branch, the governors and the president. They have to determine where or if it's spent, and they can tie it up.
Yep.
So why does Netanyahu stand by and allow Trump to say all the things he said? And people were trying to examine his body language. Well, I'm keeping in mind I don't know if he had an interpreter in his ear, or if he's sound enough in English to understand exactly what is being said. But I couldn't read his body language to determine if he's surprised or whatever. But he stood by and let Trump say all that. So is he kowtowing? Is he bent the knee to Trump? Or is he working on something with Trump? Putin made it pretty obvious years ago. Netanyahu doesn't
like Putin, okay.
They're playing a game, but I don't know how to read it. So I'm just curious.
You look at Netanyahu, and one of the things that he wants to do over there is take over the Gaza Strip, right? But they can't do that and end the show either. And now that Trump's talking about it, Netanyahu is going to be all for it, right? If you look at some of the things that he had said about Trump previously, he was pretty excited to see Trump come back, right? Because I don't know how many people know it. Everybody likes to call Trump a Christian, right? I've got several videos where he has said not only he is not, but in 2017 he was persuaded by his daughter to convert to Judaism, right? So that's one of the reasons why they love him over there, right? Because he is part of that mindset, and I'm not going to go too deep into that. That was just
go ahead. Let's go ahead. I'm curious.
Well, Judaism is not Christianity, right? Everybody should be able to understand that. Even though this nation, we say we're founded on Judeo-Christian principles, the Judeo principles are the foundations of God's people, God's covenant people, right? Found in the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, right? Those are the principles by which governments operate and the people are to conduct themselves. Okay. So when we say Judeo-Christian principles, it is founded on that manner under the Christian religion. As Christ being our king, we have no king but King Jesus, our founders would say, right? So there's a difference between Judaism and Judeo. Judaism is the belief in the religion of the Jews. Okay. The same thing that we see in the New Testament, right? The same thing that Christ came to abolish but it's falling back under the guise of the Jewish laws, right? Namely, not only the first 5 books of the Bible, but even going farther than that, what is found in the Talmud as well. That's a very dangerous place to be.
And there's where you've also got to make the distinction within Judaism. There's different sects of Judaism, and First Temple Judaism is entirely different than Talmudic Judaism.
Talmud is a godless book. I'll come right out and say it. Anything that says that you can go ahead and have sex with a 3-year-old and it's like poking him in the eye, it's nothing. That is a godless statement right there.
So a lot of what I hear, and this is just firsthand experience, right? In and out of the churches, talking about these kinds of things, I get shut down quite frequently, right? The main reason I believe why people continue to allow this funding over there to Israel and wanting to remain an allies is because of a lack of understanding of the scriptures. Okay. So we already talked about when the modern day nation of Israel was established, that Israel was never a nation throughout scripture, but rather just a select chosen people, right? Starting with Abraham and then later called Israel, through Jacob, right? Jacob and the 12 tribes. But when you begin to look at it, one of the things that first caught my attention years ago is when I was reading through Revelation, and in Revelation, I think it's 2:9 or 3:9, whichever one it is, where he says, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, right? So even the Lord makes distinction between his covenant people, those who are Jews and those who are not. And I was going to go through some of these in a minute because it's important that the church understand what they're supporting, right? The modern day nation of Israel is not the Israel that is mentioned in the Bible. It is a politically motivated piece of land out there that is being funded. And for the most part, now I'm not talking about the Jewish people, okay? I'm talking about the nation of Israel. There's a difference. I don't condemn Palestine. I condemn the people of Palestine that promote these wars, right? There are good, there are bad. Same thing in America. There are good, there are bad, right? I don't condemn American people as a whole, only those who are promoting this lawlessness. So understand that before we get too far and somebody calls me an anti-Semite.
Equal opportunity haters of most of the governments across the globe, because they're all working together. And it's not the people. The people of this entire globe have been victim of these psychopaths.
Oh, but it's anti-Semitic to be against one group of people who claim to be from the lineage of Shem versus another group of people who claim to be from the lineage of Shem. Somehow that's anti-Semitic.
Yeah. And understand in AD 70, when the temple was destroyed, not only was the temple of Israel destroyed, but all the records that went with it. There is no one on earth that can prove that they are a Jew except by what was handed down through their parents. But all the records have been destroyed, right? So you can't trace back your lineage back to any one of the 12 tribes if you wanted to. There's no proof of that.
Well, that really's got to suck to everybody in the entire world that has to claim that they're one type of people or another, when it turns out, in fact, we're all related. And it's a dumb argument. It's a dumb argument.
Yeah, it's just vain genealogies is all it is, right? So I'm going to breeze through some of these scriptures before Curtis comes on, because this kind of opens it all up and lays it out. And this is all New Testament stuff, okay? I'm not even going to go back to the Old Testament because the covenants have changed between old and new. But I'm not saying we throw out the Old Testament either, because we have very, very good use for that. But this is only regarding those who would call themselves Jews today. No difference than the Pharisees had called themselves Jews then, and Christ had said that if you love the Father, how did he word that? Basically, if you knew God, you would know me, right? And he had called them that they are of their father, the devil. Okay, that was even at that time. So in Matthew 21, he gives out a parable. Christ tells this parable in front of all the Pharisees, right? Talking about a certain householder who planted a vineyard. He hedged it round about and digged a wine press in it. He built a tower and let it out to husbandmen, went into a far country. When the time of fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the husbandmen that they might receive the fruits of it. And the husbandman took his servants and beat one, killed another, stoned another. Again, he sent other servants more than the first, and they did unto them likewise, right? You have a householder who is God. You have a vineyard, which is the land. You have a wine press in it, right? Which are the laws that were given to them. You have a tower, which is the safety and security through his covenant that he gave to his people. He lent it out to husbandmen, right? Those are the people of the day, God's covenant people, the nation, or the nation of Israel at the time. And I say the word nation facetiously. It's the people of Israel at the time. And then he sent his servants, who were all the prophets, right, to warn them. And they killed them, stoned them, etc., etc. He said, but last of all, he said unto this saying, they will reverence my son. But when the husbandmen saw the son, they said among themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him and let us seize on his inheritance. Right? There's Jesus Christ, God sending his son right to the people. They caught him and cast him out of the vineyard and slew him. When the Lord therefore of the vineyard cometh, what will he do unto these husbandmen? He asked the Pharisees. They said unto him, he will miserably destroy those wicked men and let out his vineyard unto other husbandmen, which shall render him the fruits in their seasons. Jesus said unto them, did ye never read in the scriptures the stone which the builder rejected, the same has become the head of the corner? This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore say unto you, the kingdom of God shall be taken from you and given to a nation bringing forth the fruits thereof. Understanding, we're talking about covenants here, right? We're talking about the kingdom, the new covenant that we have. Okay, so he even told the Pharisees of the day, who were, for the most part, Jews, right? He says, no, this is going to be taken from you and given to somebody else. And we saw that happening. Coming into Romans, when he's talking about to the church at Rome, right? Talking to believers in Rome. In chapter 2, he says, for he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, right? Neither is that circumcision, which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew, which is one inwardly. And circumcision is that of the heart and the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. I heard somebody talking about this earlier, and honestly, it probably just caught my attention because I got a son that's like 6 days old, right? So this is like first and foremost coming up. But he was talking about this and understanding that even when Paul talked about circumcision being nothing, right, but keeping the commandments of God, that was an outward sign of an inward spiritual condition of the people, right? God's covenant people. When you think about it, what was circumcision? Right? It was obviously the removal of the foreskin of a male appendage. However, it was a little bit more than that, because that is an area that you do not take a knife to. Every man that hears this understands you don't go near a man with a knife in that regard, right? You think about it in the new covenant, right? Because they didn't put the Greeks and the Gentiles under bondage of circumcision in the New Testament. Think about it in the new covenant. Circumcision of the heart. It is the removal of something we hold dear to ourselves, right? All men can understand this point. It is the removal of something we hold dear to ourselves as an outward sign. The inward sign of that is the removal of everything who we are, willingly put ourselves in death that Christ can make us live. Okay? There's your circumcision discussion of the day. Let's go on. In Romans 9, he was talking to him and he said, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants and the giving of the law and the service of God and the promises? Whose are the fathers, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, Christ came, who is over all, God blessed forever. Amen. Not as though the word of God hath taken none effect, for they are not all Israel which are of Israel. Okay? He's telling them at the time, the Israelites, they are not all Israel, even though they are all under Jacob and Isaac and Abraham. Right? He goes on in chapter 11 a little bit farther. He says, I say then, have they, that's the Jews, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid, but rather through their fall, salvation has come to the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. He goes on a few verses later, wilt thou say then the branches are broken off that I might be grafted in? Okay, speaking to Gentiles here in Rome. He says, were the Israelites broken off from the covenant? That way the Gentiles could come in? No, that's called replacement theology, right? I don't believe in that garbage. He says, well, because of unbelief, they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear, for if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God. On them which fell, severity, and toward thee, goodness. But if thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou shalt be cut off. For they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, which means if they believe, then they would be grafted right back into the covenant people, right? For God is able to graft them in again. For if thou wert cut from an olive tree which is wild by nature, and wert grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? Okay. And there's a lot going on here, but let me say, all of us here, as far as I know, we're all the wild olive branches, right? And I'm a Gentile. I admit that. I can't trace my lineage back to Abraham to save my life, right? I'm probably one of the ones who come from some Edomite family, for all I know, coming from Germany and Norway. But nonetheless, this is not replacement theology, as some would call it, because I get accused of that all the time. It's not replacement. It's the expansion of God's kingdom, as he said in through the prophet Isaiah, of the increase of his government, there shall be no end, right? It's the ever expanding reach of how far God will go to reach somebody that was not part of the original covenant. He goes on in Romans 11 saying, I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in, right? Welcome to the fullness of the Gentiles. And so all Israel shall be saved. Now let's stop there, because he says that there are some who were broken off, right? He says they're broken off because of their unbelief. But then he says that all Israel shall be saved. But yet we see in other areas where Christ calls them that they're of their father, the devil, right? Then in Revelation, you see that he's going to make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are and are not. So when I say there's a misconception of Israel, this is what I'm talking about. And this verse often gets used for that, to say that, well, there are still Israelites out there in that nation who are unsaved. Absolutely. Because Israel is not a nation of people, but it is the covenant people of God. Those who are in Christ are of Israel, right? And somebody out there says, well, no, you're just completely wrong on that. Okay, well, let's go back a minute. Let's go back into Ephesians, where we write to the church of Ephesians in chapter 2. He says, wherefore remember that ye, being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at the time ye were without Christ, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Christ, for he is our peace, who hath made both one, and hath broken down the middle wall of partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in ordinances, for to make himself of twain one new man, so making peace, and that he might reconcile both unto God in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby, and came and preached peace to you which who were afar off, and to them which were nigh, for through him we both have access to one Spirit unto the Father. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of God, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto an holy temple in the Lord, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit. And he goes on later, I believe to Galatians. Let me see if I got this one right. I've got like a whole book written down here, so I branched off. Yeah, and the Galatians 3, right? This will be the last one. It ties it all together. Even as Abraham believed God, and it was counted unto him for righteousness, know ye therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham. They which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham. And the scriptures, foreseeing that God would justify the heathen through faith, preached before the gospel to Abraham, saying, in thee shall all nations be blessed. So then they which be of faith are blessed with faithful Abraham. So then they which be of faith are blessed. So then, skipping lines here. Hold on. So then they which be of faith are blessed with faithful Abraham. For as many are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone that continueth not in the things which are written in the book of the law to do them. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God, it is evident. The just shall live by faith, and the law is not of faith. But the man that doeth them shall live in them. Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree, that the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles through Jesus Christ, that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. Brethren, I speak after the manner of men, though it be but a man's covenant, yet if it be confirmed, no man disannulleth or addeth thereto. Now, here's where we get the change in covenants, right? Who is Israel? God's fighters. He addresses that right here in more specificity. He says, now to Abraham and his seeds were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. And this I say, that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect. For if the inheritance be of the law, it is no more of promise, but God gave it to Abraham by promise. Wherefore then serveth the law? It was added because of transgressions, till the seed should come to whom the promise was made, and it was ordained by angels in the hand of a minister. For as many of you as have been baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free, neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus. And if ye be Christ's, then are ye Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Right? This modern day nation of Israel garbage that we see coming out of the churches, right, and coming out of our own government, is absolute heresy to the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
What they are promoting is a anti-Christ government, because the nation of Israel, not the people, but the nation itself, is godless. They do not recognize the king that they so longed for in the Old Testament and continue to wait for in the New, right? They do not believe Christ came in the flesh in a majority. And thus, they are not of Abraham's seed. To be part of Abraham's seed and to be called Israel, you must be of faith in Christ. That is the New Testament Israel.
It is not replacement. It is the expansion thereof. Right. So when I see people promoting this, I have to question them and say, hey, you might want to check and see what you're actually promoting. You know, you want to continue to send funds over there, continue to fund the war, continue to slaughter millions of innocent lives, no less than they do in America in the womb, right? You might want to check what you're supporting. The biggest issue I have when government starts talking about peace, especially in other nations, when we want to get involved and solve world problems, is that it's the same government who in their own country has paid for the murder of almost 70 million children, right? In 70 years. How can we say that they are justified to do this without justifying their actions for the last 70 years? You cannot do one without the other. And if they're going to continue to attack the American people and destroy us in our own country, what do we suppose is going to be the effect if we get involved in another country like this? I see the same things happening. It is only the promotion of godlessness in every aspect. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Well, I really appreciate what you had to say today. I really do, because you're very articulate when it comes to putting truth together and getting to underlying issues, and I appreciate that very much. They have broken trust with us. Our government has broken trust with us in so many different areas that we have to be able to question them. And if we can't, then we're in real trouble, no matter what it is. And I think it's healthy. I really do think it's healthy to question everyone, because of the fact that that's what disabled us in the first place, by not asking the questions. So now the questions have to be asked. And
we still have the freedom to do what's right, and we still have the freedom of speech. But when that goes, everything else will go with it.
Did you see something yesterday? There was a, I think his name is Adam Canube, that was promoted, or I got to think the word for it, to the FCC. And he is a professor at Michigan State. I know one of his students. He was promoted there, and I think he has been a long critic of the censorship that's gone on in the platforms and such. So we see all of these wins behind the scenes that are happening. So going back to that, it's good it's really important. It's necessary for us to evaluate this so we never get taken captive again, ever, ever, ever. And if things slide off the rails here and they go in a bad direction, it's up to us, the people of the United States, to right those things here. And we need to be watchful. We need to be informed. We need to be educated. And but that goes on both sides. I mean, we need to do it in an unbiased way so that we get to the truth. The entirety of what's happened as far as faith in God, and when we watch what's happened with the churches in the United States, I am incredibly disgusted with what I've seen in the Christian church in the United States of America.
Yeah, the majority of what you see are not Christian churches. I won't even call them that anymore.
They're 501c3s and 4s that are money laundering, just as like Catholic services, Lutheran churches, or Lutheran service. That doesn't mean that the people who are, say, Catholic or Lutherans are bad. I'm saying that they have literally infiltrated. This is what they do. They don't create anything new. Satan never has. He only moves in and infiltrates and hopes that everyone shuts their mouth, shuts their eyes, and listens to the lies. And just go along to get along. You see it in political parties. You see it in churches. You see it in governments across the world. But what's behind the whole thing? It's a very, very subversive evil that infiltrates and destroys, demoralizes too. And the demoralization of the people to stop them from doing anything is part of it. It's all the D's: deception, demoralization, and destruction. Those are the way the evil works, through infiltration. So we don't have any issues with the Jewish people, the Chinese people, the Palestinian people. I have no issues with any of the people. I've got a huge issue with the governments that are out there and what they've done to kill and murder their own people. The United States sitting right at the top of the whole structure. We created Hamas, Hezbollah. We funded them all. Without the funding, the creation wouldn't be there. And they're funding it through the corporatocracy, which basically sits at the top of this right now. I can imagine that there's a lot of people that have been a part of this that didn't even realize what they were part of. And I'm going to say every single one of us is guilty of this at some level or another, because we just didn't know at the time. Some people knew, and they did it with intention. They were intentionally doing the wrong thing. Absolutely. Listen to the people at Planned Parenthood were selling baby parts and laughing about it. And if you haven't seen the videos, buckle up, because it's a real thing. But with that said, there's a amount of discernment that has to be used when we're looking at all these things, is to look at them and ask God to give both discernment and wisdom, so that we can see things for what they are and not being manipulated by the AI, by the global powers that be, because the intelligence community can predict our behavior. And each and every one of, if you don't think they've got a file on you or me or everybody, they have or had a file on every single one of us. They can predict what we're going to do and how we're going to react every single time. So with that being said, we need to approach all things with discernment, and that includes what's being done over there to hopefully end the killing and the bodies piling up in the rubble over there, because nobody can convince me that the trillions of dollars that we've poured into Israel have done anything else but contribute to the death and the destruction in Palestine and all of it, just like Planned Parenthood. And you made a really good analogy to that, because the ones that have been holding the purse strings to this, their goal is death and destruction. Now I'm hoping that we're in a new era here, that we're working through it, and that the best spooks on the planet are the ones that can stand with the enemy. You keep your enemy closer in order to take them down the right moment. And I pray to God that that's the situation right now. We'll see.
Yeah. We need to re-educate not only ourselves, right? But we need to re-educate the future generations, or rather educate them properly. The mindset that has been taught over, well, I can only speak to my generation. The mindset that has been taught in my generation.
And mine.
Yeah, I feel for them. I understand. But we have parents that are just dropping their kids off to these indoctrination camps, right? Let's bring us around a little bit. We have Christian parents calling themselves Christian parents, dropping off their kids to the indoctrination camps every day for 5 days a week, and then somehow expecting that an hour on Sunday morning going to church is going to correct all of the 30 plus hours of indoctrination that they've been given, right? That's not the way this works, right? The law was very clear when God gave us the law that we are to teach it to our children, right? Day, night, when we rise up, when we go to bed, if we're sitting up or lying down, right? Write it on the doorposts all over the place. Why? So that they will know the truth and cannot be persuaded out of it, right? I saw something, and you just mentioned Planned Parenthood. So I'm going to bring this up. Actually, I'm going to see if I can't.
Well, we are commissioned to, it's our duty to raise our children up. And I started seeing this when my children were born, the dropping off your kids and thinking that you're doing the best thing to them or for them by having them so busy and going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. The kids are so busy and traumatized by this schedule of keeping them busy every minute of the day. that they don't learn how the world works. They don't know how to play as an education. It's getting ready to be an adult. They don't learn critical thinking because they're just going from one cue to, a line or a cattle line to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next.
Yep. And for anybody who says, I've said it before, for anybody who says that I'm not qualified to teach my children, right, or to raise up my own children, homeschool them basically, right? I always like to point them out. I was like, who taught your kid how to tie his shoes? Probably you, right? You taught him something, right? Who taught him how to walk? Probably you. You taught him something. It's that simple. It's a simple little things that we can do to raise up our children, right? I saw this from a friend of mine, and I'll tell you, it's hard to read, right? But this is a lot of the mindset that is coming out of our education system regarding the murder of children, right? I'm gonna read this because I think everybody needs to hear this. This was actually on social media. It was within a group that was selling abortion pills. Okay. Just keep the context a little bit. This woman posted anonymously in the group. She was 7 months pregnant, right? And didn't want to be. Here's what she wrote. She said, "Finally free. The baby came out crying. I was scared and still shaking." She thanks the group that gave her the abortion pills, right? She says, "Thank you for helping me with everything after being scammed 3 times." She says, "I don't know what to do with the baby. I have hidden him in the garage. He's now dead. Any advices?" She says, "Please don't judge me. I had no other choice. Was 7 months. Did the process around 2 o'clock. In an hour, everything came out." Where was the love for this young lady? Right? How did we get to this point in America where this was okay? This is stuff that we saw happening in China by force of the government. In America, they don't even have to force the people to do it. They're doing it willingly. Why? Because they don't know that they have a choice.
Well, it's not even that. I mean, this is such an unnatural state for a parent. Look at animals. Animals will literally do anything to save their offspring, not people. And it has devolved into the love of most will wax cold. Even the natural relationship between parents and children has been absolutely hijacked. I cannot even relate to that mindset, and I'm pretty sure most of us could not. So incredibly horrific that a parent would literally see this and say, and kill their own child. That was killing her own child. If you ever saw an animal do something, what's really weird is if you put this in terms, if you ever saw an animal basically rip things out of their stomach, their offspring, people would be horrified, but they aren't when it comes to people. Why? Okay.
You go to jail if you harm an eagle egg, right?
Yeah.
You go to jail if you harm turtle eggs. But you can take a woman's egg, you can fertilize it, you can raise it up for months, and then completely destroy it. God's creation, destroy it. A living life. Then nothing happens. You see why I have a problem with government trying to promote good and peace and allowing this to continue, right? I think everybody should have this problem. And those who can sit back and not be not get furious over this thought. I don't understand those kind of people.
Yeah.
I saw a post years ago from a lady who was seeking to get an abortion as well, right? Seeking to murder children. out of ignorance. And she had gone to this service, and I won't mention the name of the service because I have friends up there, and they're attacked as it is enough. But she had gone to this service and basically told them, I'll have the baby and then give it to you, but you're going to provide for everything in the meantime, right? Pretty arrogant thing to say.
Yeah, who created the problem?
Yeah, right. But the people of this service said, okay. They took care of everything, right? And she still ended up killing the child.
Wow.
Now, what I question, right? Because we have so many people who call themselves Christians that say they want to put an end to this, right? My question is, what are you willing to do to stop it? Right? The church should be the first ones on scene to say, we will take care of it. We will take care of you as long as you let this child live, and then we will take care of the child. How many people are willing to open up their homes to adopt these children that parents don't want? There's plenty of adoption services out there. Namely, most of them are in it for the money, right? Don't get me wrong on that. Any adoption service that is doing it for the right thing, there's hardly any money involved at all.
Do you know how much that it takes to adopt a child?
It's an astronomical amount. They make it difficult.
I did it.
Yeah.
And it's like the amount of money for someone who has very serious injuries, whose mother died at her side with a huge closed head injury. I saw it while I was going through the process that these people that are in the government that are supposed to be protecting these kids, they just make more red tape. They make it harder. They make it harder. They make it harder. But the own agencies within the government, like CPS, is the largest human trafficking organization in North America, maybe the planet. But if you're a person that wants to adopt a child, to do right by the child, they make it her. And the really crazy thing is that it depends on your skin color and your gender, what the adoption price is. That, in my opinion, is taking advantage of people's good hearts that want to help this and turning it into, something that's just horrific. It needs to change dramatically.
Yeah, the state has no business over children, by the way, right?
I'm going to bring Chris in. We're talking about this a minute. So morning, Chris. I don't want you to sit backstage any longer. Good morning. So join the discussion, because I think this is an important discussion to stay on.
Yeah, there is no such thing as a ward of the state, right? Children are their parents' children. The state has no business in it. They have no business in the adoption process. They have no business issuing birth certificates, right? They are only there as record keepers, right? I have children. I give them the record to say, hey, I bore this child. Actually, my wife bore the child. I'm not going to give myself credit for that. But we bore this child. Here is a record of who they are. You can file it away or you can throw it away. I don't care, right? But they're mine. You're not coming after them. They're not going to get put in a system. You have no authority over my kids. No less than they don't have any authority over anybody else's kids in the adoption process. There shouldn't be regulations on it from the state. You shouldn't see any legislation in that manner. We never delegated that authority to them. But it is the people's authority, namely the church, who should be first and foremost in this, to make all of this happen, to make sure kids survive, to make sure they get proper training, to raise them up so we don't have an ignorant generation trying to secure their freedoms, which will never happen, right? You cannot be ignorant and free. You're wishing for something that has never been nor ever will be. Okay? So yeah, I have a big problem when it comes to how people are responding and how people's mindsets have been adjusted in regards to their own children, our own posterity, right? But we are called to be our brother's keeper. And we should be looking out for this in every aspect that we can, right? And I'm not one saying, do this, but I'm not doing it. No, I've opened up my homes for kids, right? I've taken in children. All of my family has taken it, still do. They still have some, have taken in children. And for the most part, they've all been stripped back, right? Because the legal parent all of a sudden sees some financial gain and the state comes in and gives them back their legal parents. I have no authority over the legal parents. But in the meantime, I did everything I could to protect these kids, right? They're all still alive today. And they all now, for the most part, are in all pretty good homes being raised up. So I'm not a guy saying do this while I don't do it. No. Anything that I'm going to tell somebody to do, I'm going to be like, I've been there, right? I'm willing to go that far. But everybody's got to take a part in this. You can't just sit back and say, oh, yeah, murdering of the innocent's wrong. But yeah, there's nothing I can do about it. Oh, hell no. There is something you can do about it. Right?
And then they all want to give their money to Planned Parenthood. And how long has this been going on? And we have not made any gain there at all. Same thing with cancer research. No gain. It's just these huge corporate identities, because they really are. 501c3s, whatever you want to talk about. You're giving your money to it. Are they fixing anything? I'm not seeing. I met one of the gals that was in on writing the heartbeat bill, and she said, who is the biggest opponent of the heartbeat bill and fixing this? It was Right to Life. And these people are, and more and more killing happens.
So, now I look at the heartbeat bill, right? And I stood against the heartbeat bill, but for other reasons. I'd never met anybody else that took the stand on it. But I stood against the heartbeat bill because in Michigan, I'm not talking about other states. Other states needed it. But in Michigan, we already have legislation that made it a criminal act to commit an abortion. Most people didn't know that because they didn't take the time to read the law. But in Michigan, it was illegal forever, all the way since, the unconstitutional declaration of Roe versus Wade. Right? It never existed in Michigan, but the people allowed it to continue because the court said it was okay. And then they bring up this heartbeat bill. The heartbeat bill was weaker than the legislation we had on the books. So yes, I stood against it in the state of Michigan. I had to, because our laws protected the children from conception till death. The heartbeat bill protected them from heartbeat till death. Right? That's the only reason why I stood against it. But
and they continue to have us fight.
Yep.
The only way to deal with this right now on an issue that is the same thing with Israel and Palestine. The only way to stop the killing is to defund it. And I don't think anybody should have to fund something that they believe is murder in any way, shape, or form. You have to make people responsible for their actions, and they have to be responsible for what they do and not make it everybody else's problem unless you choose to step up. And shame on anybody that's not willing to help children or somebody who's in trouble. Shame on everybody. But I don't know, the taxation part of it, I've got a problem. You should never be forced to pay for the murder of another human being, ever.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it's about 10:30. I should probably get to my crew, and I'm sure Curtis is ready to go.
Well, you know what? I'm really glad for today, and thank you for being on, and thanks for being patient, Curtis. I mean, we kind of got into this subject, and it I feel like it kind of needed to be talked about today. So
yeah, it's not where it started, that's for sure.
No, it sure didn't. But what carried it through is the fact that governments murder their own people and fund the murder of people, turning what they have into destructed, pile of rubble. And, it's like, but going back to the faith part of it, we were part of the problem of creating the system because we allowed it to happen. And God bless the good people that have stepped up forward, that are willing to fight it. And it goes back to the decision. Who's in control? Right now, all of us should be on our knees praying to God for this nation, for the people of the world, and for the absolute destruction of all evil, that we may live on, in God's kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. That's where we need to be going. And following him, following his law. Well, I appreciate everything you had to say. Guys, we're going to take a 30-second break, and we'll be back with Curtis, Karen, and Ralph. I know, Bill, you got to go, but if you guys want to stay on, you can. But I'm going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back with Curtis. Yeah, stay on the line if you guys can. Bill, we'll see you later, and congratulations. Be right back.
Take care.
Good morning and welcome to the second hour, actually hour and a half hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg. It's the 5th day of February 2025, and welcome to our show. And we're going to jump right back into our panel this morning. So that was a really intense segment of BNN. I actually really appreciate that and enjoy having these hard discussions that most people aren't willing to tackle.
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show today. I appreciate it.
What's that?
Thank you for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, I think it's important for us to talk about these difficult situations that we have to write. And certainly where the money of the United States is being spent is a huge part of it, because I think that the funding part of it, as evidenced by what President Trump did with cutting back things through U.S. aid and all of that sort of thing, and watching how many jobs have been terminated and calling people to account is absolutely critical to this discussion. And I'm still doing the happy dance over here, seeing this stuff going in that direction. But once again, we all have to be involved, and the indictment really is right now on the American people to see if they're going to step up, or if they're going to say, yay, we crossed the finish line. Now we can go back to our lives and do whatever we want and not be involved because somebody's there to fix our problems. No, not a good plan. We need to be there to support the one that we voted in and hold all accountable and be part of the solution instead of the problem of people who are actually fighting, dragging the dead horses behind them that aren't willing to work. So there we go.
Yep. It's like we've gotten a criminal cartel or a mafia that's taken over our governments at the local level on up. It definitely needs to be cleaned up.
Well, and I appreciate that. So Ralph and Karen, you have any comments on that last? Let's segue into this a little bit. What are your comments? And we're going to go into the county home rule and how we need to take back our local governments in just a minute. So what say you two?
I guess I am kind of the opinion that, for most of what we were talking about, a lot of it comes down to the exceeding of the authority which was granted to our government to do things. So much of it is they're doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, and that's what's causing a lot of these problems.
My thought to expand a little bit, or just bolster one of Bill's points, was that we are all God's children by faith, not by blood. If He is our creator, and nobody is any more special than anybody else. Jesus made that very clear. And we are constantly bombarded in our country, in the world, with the idea that some people are better than others. Some people are more pure blood, quote unquote, than others, as if they're of more value than others. So even just the other day, I don't know if you are aware, but in Michigan, at least one of our restaurants was closed because they were an immigrant-owned restaurant. This was in Muskegon, so that made the news. I don't know how many others, or what they did was they had a day where immigrant-owned businesses closed because they were going to protest and make everybody understand the value of immigrants in this country. And I thought, you don't need to do that. If you're a legal immigrant, you're one of us. There is no separation. We are all at some point immigrants here. So you are not any more special as a legal immigrant than anyone else who has been here for a while. You are more special in a sense from the illegal immigrants. We're removing them. That has nothing to do with legal immigrants. So them trying to say we are special too. No, you're not. And the fact that you don't understand that yet tells me that you're not ready to be a full and complete American, because any American worth their salt knows that one of the basic foundations that we have here is that no one is created more equal than more than equal. We are all of the same here. And God sees us the same way. Whether you are a child or an adult on your deathbed, you are no more or less valuable to God and Christ. And so those people who murder their children, shame on you. You are still of value to God. You have value, and you need to ask for forgiveness. And thank goodness, thank God that Christ died for you as well. But that baby had a short life, but I know where they're going. The rest of us have to make a choice. We are old enough and wise enough to know the difference between good and evil, and we have to make a choice. But nobody else is any more special than anybody else based on gender, culture, religion, whatever. We're all the same. So this whole argument about, well, the Israeli people need this and Palestinians need that, and they need to live in a certain place. None of it matters in the grand scheme of things. Are you close to God or not?
Well, and we've talked about it before, but just to be absolutely clear on this, we talk about these countries as if there are problems with these countries, and it's not about the people of the countries. It's about the governments, which in a lot of cases are killing their own people.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like you said, the immigrants that are here legally, that's great. I know someone who legally immigrated here from China, and it was a huge celebration when she got her citizenship. I know someone else who legally immigrated here from Canada, and again, it was a huge celebration when he got his citizenship. You can still criticize the government of these countries, as their own citizens should be also criticizing their own governments and taking action on them. This is not something that we're against the people of the countries. We're against the people that are in office claiming to represent them, who in many cases do not.
Agreed.
Well said. I agree. And it's all of our responsibility to see something, say something, not sit there quiet and let these crimes happen right underneath our noses without being involved. It's not okay. And we're going to stand in front of God for an account of this if we don't get involved. So let's talk about local governance right now, Curtis. And you were talking about the home rule counties and how that works. Okay, now I am very unfamiliar with this subject. Okay, I know just a little bit, but I'm fairly unfamiliar with it. So I appreciate you taking the time to teach us and tell us what you know about that. And I was kind of shocked about some of the things you said yesterday, especially regarding the fact that we were talking about the DNR, which absolutely at this point in time needs to be completely stripped down to nothing, and everyone involved in it charged for the crimes that they've committed under the DNR. I firmly believe this. But when you talked about the fact that they're trying to take over the land, because if you are not a land owner, you are only a debt slave to basically the system, and how they're going about this and how it's connected to county home rule seems to be pretty fundamentally important at this point in time. So please explain this to us so that we understand this better.
All right. Can you bring up the Declaration of Independence on
I can
screen?
sure try. You go ahead and keep. Well, I'm looking for this. Go ahead and continue on.
All right. There's an important aspect yesterday that I didn't bring up, and that was the Land Ordinance of 1785. And that's very important. Very first telling of the Home Rule and the usurpation that has been put upon us is the same thing happening today as it was in the late 1700s, before the Declaration of Independence was written. And these are usurpations to take away our home rule aspect of self-governance under common law. If you scroll down to probably 2/3 of the way down on the list of grievances, it says, let me find it again. I just had it. Okay. Do you see the section where it says, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments? Also, a lot of this stuff that you put the pieces of the puzzle together is reading old documents, old books, or studying history. In order to figure out the whole picture, you have to put all these pieces of the puzzle together to get the whole picture, because we know that the education system is very poor. It's not supposed to be run from the federal level, and there's a reason for that, and it's in these documents. If you go down after that one, let's see, 1, 2, 3 more down, it says, he has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, and here's the kicker, burnt our towns. I read, I don't have the information in front of me where exactly I read this from, but in the 1760s and 1770s, leading up to the War of Independence, the British was systematically going around after they retracted a lot of the main charters, and they were retracting, they're seizing, destroying history of the common law form of government that we had. Basically, the colonists figured it out how to govern themselves. They had city charters, as I was mentioning yesterday, city charters, township and county, city compacts, township and county charters. And so here's a lot of the overlooked aspects of the Declaration of Independence is in these lists of grievances. The information's there. We just need to do the research to understand what this all means. So the next thing I want you to do is go to the Land Ordinance of 1785. A lot of people make the mistake, even in the education system, I think it's through influence, that we overlook these very important documents. We're going from the beginning of the Declaration of Independence straight to the U.S. Constitution. Well, the Founding Fathers did the U.S. Constitution for the national government, the federal level, and the federal level only, because the states were sovereign nation states. Another thing I want to mention is in words have meanings, especially if you look at the Black law dictionary, words and phrases, words in the phrases have meanings. So if you say the United States, United capital, States capital, the United States, it's referring to plural or singular, like centralized. If you change one word and say these United States, United lowercase, which is describing the noun states, these United States, now you have a whole different meaning. The United States plural versus these United States, United sovereign states. Now we have a better perspective of what we're talking about. If you go to the land ordinance, can you go to Wikipedia?
I can.
Land ordinance of 1785 and scroll down to where it says influence. Right there, it says many historians recognize the influences of the colonial experience in the land ordinances of the 1780s. The committees that formulated these ordinances were inspired by the individual colonial experiences of the states that they represented. Okay. And that's what they learned, because originally they had, when the colonies first came here, they had charters where they learned to self-govern by. They had a lot of freedom. If they were under charters where as a different form of charter, a lot of these charters are based in commerce and trade. That was very important with the British, is commerce and trade, the love of money. And everything was surrounded around that. One of my favorite authors that I follow is William Federer, because he understands where the basic concept of our common law came from. And so the Land Ordinance of 1785 painted us a picture of where we got our influence of our townships, cities, townships, and counties, and the home rule charters that we self-govern by under common law. Let's see. In addition, the use of surveyors to precisely chart out the new townships and western expansion was directly influenced by the New England land system. A lot of this stuff came from the founding fathers' influence from the colonies under common law. And this is what the British were going around in the 1760s, 1770s, destroying all of these home rule charters so they can bring us under a new form of government. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is, can you find the Northwest Ordinance 1787? Go to Wikipedia. And go down to Establishment of Territorial Government.
Of 1787?
Mm-hmm. Northwest Ordinance 1787. And it says, second paragraph, once the population of a territory, now remember the states, originally at that time, they were considered territories or boundaries of land that contained our cities, townships, and counties. That was I would say the county was probably the most powerful territorial jurisdiction at the time. Now, what we have to study and learn is territory, and jurisdiction. You can be on a piece of land, you will be in a township. And when that township is going to be in a county. Now, the county is another jurisdiction. And that county is going to be inside of a state. That's another jurisdiction. That state's going to be within the United States, the boundaries of our states, of our country. That's another jurisdiction. One of the things that the founding fathers did not want was the federal government or national level of government involved in the affairs of we the people at the local level, because they didn't want kings. They had a sovereign king from England, and we didn't want a sovereign figure as a king over our country. We didn't want a king as a governor. So here they're referring to once the population of a territory reached 5,000, who would receive the authority to elect representatives from counties or townships to a territorial general assembly. So all this stuff, the townships and counties, predated the states. Wayne County predated, like I was telling you before, Wayne County predated the state of Michigan by 50 years. And that was for law and order, the sheriff and the courts. So the most powerful territorial jurisdiction at that time was the county. So the state was actually a territory for our counties where we are the sovereign and have a home of address, you know, where we own our territory in our county, our territory. Every square inch of the United States resides within a county somewhere. Let's see. So that's basically what I'm getting at is, oh yeah, I was going to go to, there's something else I wanted to read, but now I can't remember. But anyway, if we understand these concepts and we educate ourselves on where the assemblies and the common law structure, the home rule framework that originally was intended, everything would be so much different. But instead, the British wanted a more of a corporate form of local government that they could have more control over, primarily for commerce and trade. When people think of the War of Independence that created the Declaration of Independence, that was the outcome. They think primarily of the Boston Tea Party, imposed taxes that, you know, we didn't vote for these taxes. But these lists of grievances are so overlooked, and we don't understand really these lists of grievances and what it means. So one of the important things, people that discovered or wanted to bring back home rule was, oh, excuse me, just dropped my books. Thomas McIntyre Cooley. He's the author of the Cooley Doctrine, which said, hey, wait a minute, government is going in the wrong direction. As what happened is, as a person named, is a Supreme Court Justice Dillon. He came up with Dillon's rule. On his deathbed, or shortly before he passed away, he said, I think I'm not going to say where this is at. I don't have it in front of me. I would encourage to research. People need to research and educate themselves. What he said was that he thinks that what he did destroyed the future generations of the people of these United States of America. And he opened a Pandora's box for eminent domain and centralized governance. And there's a whole history here that needs to be told. It really does. And I'm so thankful. We have one of the biggest heroes that we have today is Michigan Supreme Court Justice Thomas Cooley. And he's the one that was saying, hey, there's another side to the coin when it comes to local governance. Because just because after the British burned the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. in 1814, doesn't mean that the British left and their quest for power and dominance was over. They went and they infiltrated. They still had loyalists. They still had people that was loyal to the crown that was working against us. And a lot of people just like today, the love of money. They worship money over goodness, faith, biblical principles. That's not what they worship. If you go to, I'm going to look at another section here. Right above the establishment of territorial government, it talks about education. That's in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And if you read that section, the 1787 ordinance encouraged education, stipulating that religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and happiness of mankind, schools and means of education shall forever be encouraged. And they even put a lot, one of the lots in the townships, lot number 16, is where we'd have our schools. Education was so important. They wanted our children and future generations to be taught locally, not coming from the federal government. They despised the federal government. They did not trust the federal government because of so many the problems that we've experienced. Just like today, we have factions within our own Michigan GOP. Factions were really a big thing back at that time. And so we have to understand these basic concepts. One of the good books that I encourage people to go online, you can get it, it's been digitized, and that's The Chronological History of Wayne County. It was written in 1895. There is even something that right around the 1820s that had stated that the federal government or the national government the jurisdiction was prohibited from the affairs of the local jurisdiction. So that was very, very strong. We don't really know anything about that today. The only way the federal government is able to get into our local jurisdictions is through money and contracts. And that's where the general law form of government is predominant because it's set up as corporations, commerce and trade, and it opens a door for a fourth branch of government called the administrative state. The administrative state comes directly from the national government to the local level, and it basically bypasses the state government. You take a look at the census. They have to go to the counties and the cities for census. When they're distributing money from the federal government, it's basically that's how they get their foot in the door is, hey, we'll give you this money, you sign this contract, and now we're in. That is not what the founding fathers intended. I took a snapshot and mentally trying to put all the pieces together of what would a constitutional county home rule charter or the original structure of a county framework under common law that they had back then. And I'm going to read a few lines from this. We had a county common law. We had grand juries back then at the county level. County assemblies where the townships had their assemblies. And that's where they elected their delegation to represent them. And then that went to the larger general assemblies. The townships had a constable. And so when we had a militia back then, I believe there's one parcel of land that they had the armory for their local militia. And that's where these pool of people came from, is where the sheriff would get their posse from. So think of the township, the constable, taking care of their platoon. If you think of a military structure, because I was in the Army for 25 years. So the township constable would be in charge of their platoon. Each of the townships would have a platoon, and then at the county level, where the committee of safety would be at, and where the sheriff is, they would have, think of a county guard. Today, we don't have anything even similar to that. If it is, it's kind of privatized. We don't really know about it. It's within public or private partnerships with the sheriff's department. Everything, it's totally different than what it was originally designed. So if we had this system, we wouldn't have a need for anything at the federal level as far as FEMA goes, unless we just needed extra resources, and then we invited them to assist us in our territorial jurisdiction, not for FEMA to come in and take over. Now they're out of their purview. They're out of their jurisdiction. Okay. That's why they say that the sheriff is the highest law enforcement in his territorial jurisdiction, his county. And if anybody from the state or federal level of government come into his territorial jurisdiction, they have to go to the sheriff and work with him. And the sheriff has to say, okay, come on in. I'm inviting you into my territorial jurisdiction to assist the people in my county. So that's one of the things that we need to get back to is this type of government where we're self-governing. We can take care of ourselves. And when we need help, then we call on to the higher forms of government to assist us. At one time, the township supervisors were the original county commissioners. I don't know when we started getting county commissioners, but originally it was the township supervisors that were the county commissioners.
That would be a really great structure instead of having them autonomous from the local governance.
Yeah, it really is amazing. We think that we're in control of our counties because we elect county commissioners. Well, county commissioners now under general law is almost like a figurehead where they sign the checks. And since there's a county executive or county administrator, I should say under general law counties, that's somebody that we don't even elect. We don't really know a whole lot about them. Our county administrator has been there for 20 some years, and the county commissioners said, well, he was here before we were elected. And
So
then
they're really running the show.
well, yeah, he's the county administrator or the county executive, depending on which governmental structure it is. He's the CEO, the president of the corporation, because the counties are set up as corporations. It's easier to do it that way for commerce, trade, contract, civil law. It's not operating, I don't see, under common law, not like that framework of government. And that framework of government, they have their own committees. The county administrator, he can be in charge of 20, 25 different committees that we don't know who these people are, like zoning committees, all of these other committees. And one of the county commissioners said, our county's got 24 of them. I didn't know that. I don't think many people do. We're really not self-governing in our territorial jurisdiction. That's an issue. The other thing that I wrote down was restoration of elected delegates for representation, non-party. Why are we not representing or electing delegates to representing we the people? Instead, in the counties, we elect delegates to represent a party. What about just we the people?
I have a real problem with that too, Curtis. I mean, that's something that you can see that party loyalty keeps us fighting and divided on the issues. And the parties are by and large controlled by the corporations. They're voting, they're funded by it through dark money and PACs and such. They are not being funded, nor do they serve we the people.
And I think something else too that I see getting lost a lot is that the president, we've really strayed far too closely to being a democracy for how our structure was supposed to be set up, in that neither the president nor the Senate are supposed to be directly elected. And, you see that at multiple different levels where we're supposed to have the states for the president. The states are supposed to be there's a reason why we have the Electoral College. The Electoral College wasn't supposed to be tied to a direct public vote. And so there's a time delay there in the change that can happen in the government. There's supposed to be certain positions which end up being time delayed because they are elected by by the people in the House, not directly by the people, so you don't get the chaos. And we've strayed away from that concept quite far at this point.
Now, let's take this another step further. When Benjamin Franklin was asked, what kind of government have you given us? He said, a constitutional republic, if you can keep it. Now, we think of just the states having the state constitutions. But you know what? The state constitutions didn't come till much later. We need to get back to what we were supposed to have, county constitutions, constitutional county charters. That's what we're supposed to have. Now imagine a country with 3,143 county constitutions. In 2016, nearly 3,100 counties were red. Less than 80 were blue. But yet Hillary Clinton still won the popular vote. And so that equates to like the 20 largest Democrat-run cities getting the popular vote. Imagine 20 Democrat cities dictating to the rest of the country, nearly 3,100 red countries, how you're going to live. There's a definite reason why they wanted the voting system the way it was.
Curtis, where do you get this term constitutional county? That the concept of a county having a constitutional charter.
Where did that come from?
Yes.
Well, as we can see in the list of grievances, the way that the colonists progressed, this is something that they learned how to self-govern from generations of being under a charter where we were given the freedom to learn to self-govern, set up our own form of government. And a lot of it was based on what they knew from Europe, from England. Because the sheriff and the county, the shire reef, all that concept had been around for 1,000 years. That's what we had. But at that time, the sovereign was the king. The sovereign wasn't we the people. Now, when we, the people, are the sovereign, now we are the king. But we're the king in our territorial jurisdiction. So when you have, if you had imagine this, if the counties could act like Robert's rules, and when the national government or somebody in the national level of government did something that was unconstitutional or caused injury and harm to we the people, imagine the counties having the power where they could 2/3 majority vote could nullify unconstitutional federal law. Imagine a constitutional republic where it was set up like that, where we the people were the sovereign in our counties and had a voice, where we could say, no, we don't want that. Imagine if we had the power to nullify overreach. I shouldn't say overreach, just say usurpation from the state government, where the state government has become the sovereign king, which is not what we want. We don't want a governor that's a sovereign king over us.
I've heard that so many times that when I talk to people at the local level, that the state tells us what to do. That's exactly
because under general law, we're on the wrong flip side of the coin under Dillon's rule, Supreme Court Justice Dillon. Because remember, there's two sides of the coin. The states gave us because we failed. Here's what happened. We failed to self-govern. You got to remember, when Wayne County was created by a Continental Congress, the county being the highest or the most powerful territory jurisdiction for law and order, we were a county for 50 years before the state government was even created. And then if you look at the loyalists infiltrating, and if they could get to a judge, imagine getting to a judge like Supreme Court Justice Dillon and convince him that the federal government has power and the state government has power, I'd say federal, of power of eminent domain, because they were putting in the roads, the interstates, the train systems, And a lot of that, in order to do that, was based on a ruling by Judge Dillon. So that's the one side of the coin. That's the one that says the county is a creature of the state. You know, I hate when I hear that, because if the county is a creature of the state, then the states are a creature of Congress, and that's just simply not true.
No. See, what I'm thinking of is the origins of common law originated in biblical concepts.
Yes.
The concept of sovereignty and the people being not under the king falls in from the Magna Carta, and there's a lot in there about sheriffs and county principles are in the Magna Carta or Charta, depending on how you say it. And then we have the Articles of Confederation. Then we developed this Constitution concept, and it was highly debated. It still is. The basis of it is that the government is restrained by the people in the creation of the Constitution. Constitution is not above the people, it's above the government, and it was created by the people. So it can be amended when the people decide that they need to amend it. But I've never heard of a constitution type document at the county level. I've heard of charters. I'm not suggesting that it's necessarily a bad idea. If you've got a county government needs to know their place. But the people shall govern over the county. Now, charters are another hotly debated kind of concept, and in the state of Michigan, at least with Muskegon County, because I had researched that, it came out of an act of Michigan Congress. The county became Muskegon County by an act of Congress. There's supposed to be a charter for this. I know that. I asked for it. They don't have it. They don't even know what I'm talking about when I ask for it. They say that it doesn't exist, or they've never heard of it, or I can't find it, or whatever. If you don't have proof of a charter, how do you exist?
Well, that's the problem, is we the people failed to self-govern, create our charter. And so if we don't self-govern, the state's going to step in and do it for us. Okay, so that's where the general law came from. They set up the framework of our county. Now it's up to us to decide whether we want to self-govern or not. Okay, and create and pass our charter. And I like to use the constitutional county home rule charter. When the founding fathers did the U.S. Constitution, that was for the uniformity everywhere, so there isn't factions. When you look at the UN, the main purpose of the UN was an attack, like I mentioned yesterday. An attack on one nation state is an attack on all. At the federal level of government, you have the same concept. An attack on one of our sovereign nation states is an attack on all in these united, lowercase u, United States. These United States. We need to think more of that plurality of the sovereign states, these United States, instead of the United States, because they really want us to focus on singular, which is a centralized government, which is a precursor to a one world government. So we have to get back to educating ourselves, and that's one of the main concepts. And right here in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, based on prior colonial history and what was best for us to secure our happiness, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness or property, is right here in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Why is more emphasis being put on the list of grievances and the Land Ordinance of 1785 and the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, because it's these documents. If it wasn't for these documents, the U.S. Constitution probably wouldn't have the Bill of Rights that we have and worded the way it is, because you can't have one without the other. If the Declaration of Independence is a valid document, so are these other vital documents of history. Because there's a lot of information that's hidden in these documents, and a lot of history that's been erased that we need to rediscover. It's like when I went to film school at UCLA before I went to Iraq back in 2002, 2003. I took an acting class every semester. And one of the things that you're taught is you need to put yourself back in that time frame and look at it from their perspective and from that person's perspective. And that's one of the things, that's a good training tool to get back to. If we could get a movie, I would love to get a hold of Mel Gibson and make a movie with him, because he loves American history. And oh, wow. There's so many stories that need to be told that the American people do not know. If we had that education,
would you describe America as a collection of nations, more like the term country describing a collection of nations, versus America itself being these United States being equal to a nation? In other words, for example, in some of the assemblies, they call them nation states. So Michigan being a nation equals state versus just a state. It is a nation alone. Now, can it defend itself against Canada? No. So we have a collection of nations.
Well, it might be able to if we had changed the tax structure to the way that it's supposed to be. Right now, everything is getting stolen, and it's through the tax structure. But
and I would argue too that each state is supposed to, by its very nature, we're supposed to be able to defend against threats, both foreign and domestic, ourselves. We're not supposed to have the standing armies, and that's supposed to be up to our own militias to be able to be in a defensive role. And with that said, guys, I think I'm probably going to have to take off. So
okay, thanks for being on here today, Ralph.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
I love being on here and just talking through these issues. This is awesome.
Yeah, I love history. It's like if you're an explorer and you're researching and you discover something that you didn't know, and it's like, holy cow! And then these light bulbs, these ideas, that things just click and they just make sense. I love it. So one of the other things here, so if we restored the Committee of Safety, who worked with the sheriff, we had the militias with the constable in the townships. They would be like their own squads or platoons. And then when you formed with the General Assembly at the county assembly level, you'd kind of like have your company. If you kind of look at it as a military structure. So the restoration of elected delegates for representation, non-party, and they can be used for ballot hand counting. Why not pay them? Why not pay the delegates to hand count? Why not?
Ooh, that's kind of a great idea.
Yeah, why are we paying for these machines and outsourcing? Outsourcing should be a last resort.
Well, the machines are absolutely unreliable, and they will never be reliable. Anything that attaches to the internet or anything electronic can be hacked. I've got a report that's going to be coming out here as soon as I do the rest of my fact checking on it. And it's going to pretty much bring everybody right down to their, oh my God moment of what's actually happening and how badly not just our elections have been hacked through electronic means, but our very lives. They're picking the winners and losers. Our vote does not matter at this moment in time at all.
Now, there is no legislation that prohibits us from hand counting. So if we put into the charter that we, township, the clerks work for us, they work for us, that we can put in the charter that if we have to, the state says right under general law that we have to use the tabulators, okay, all right. But our charter says that we're also going to hand count. So guess what? We're going to hand count the ballots at the same time we run them through the tabulators. Hey, I think that's a good concept. So the other thing with these, the common law grand jury, county level grand juries, people's courts of justice, that gives us the ability to redress, a pathway to redress of grievances. It makes it easier for we the people to achieve those goals. Ability to nullify unconstitutional state statute or state governmental usurpation and give us a path to indict. Ability to hold the people that we elect accountable. And so we have ability for immediate recalls and replacement of elected public servants that violate their oaths of office or duties. And then prohibit level of government and law jurisdiction from the jurisdiction of the townships and counties as it was originally intended. And if you could bring up Section 34, Article 7 of the 1963 Michigan Constitution, I'd love to have you read that. Section 34, Article 7. So there was a Home Rule movement when back in the 50s, Section 34, Article 7.
Got it.
I can't see it. I'm going to have you read it.
The provisions of this Constitution and law concerning counties, townships, cities, and villages shall be liberally construed in their favor. Powers granted to counties and townships by this Constitution and by law shall include those fairly implied and not prohibited by this Constitution.
Now, that has power. That says a lot. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we're supposed to have. Now, you take a look at sanctuary cities. Why is it that sanctuary cities, which they're Democrat run, they're giving the sanctuary and home rule a bad name, which could be a trick to deceive us into putting a nail in the coffin and getting rid of our ability to have home rule? It's because these sanctuary cities are run by these Democrats that are more along the lines of, I just call them mafia, working with a globalist.
Well, it's a global crime syndicate for sure. And a lot of them had mayors that were fully funded in place. They had a target on the back of 175 cities in the United States whom they placed their little Marxist puppet mayors in. So it's a real problem because there's not, appears to me not to be one problem, but there's like a cascade of problems that created what we're dealing with right now, most of which could be dealt with and fixed by proper funding or defunding or deregulation or nullification. And
that's going through that fourth branch of government, the administrative state. You allow us in to take over. You sign a contract with us, sign a deal with the devil here. You take the money and let us control things for your own good. Yeah, what a load of malarkey. I'm glad they're getting rid of the Department of Education and all of these executive agencies. Just like here in Michigan, we have a tyrant king that's got all these executive agencies that they think they can do whatever we want. We're under general law. Counties, we're not self-governing. We did it to ourselves. And it really wasn't our fault because we're not educated.
Well, look at the zoning boards. Even the zoning boards are being controlled by an economic entity that's out in this area. I believe it's in Grand Haven. So they've hired these people that are consultants, and that's what they do. But they're not consultants. They're steering, and they're steering us in this instance to destroy our food chain. And it's a company that most of them are employing right now and relying on to steer the townships. So what they're doing, though, is they're destroying economic means. And this is happening on every single level of our government. This is what's the barrier for having, I believe, the home rule, which you're talking about, and the way it's supposed to work in place. So we've got a multiplicit attack that needs to happen all at the same time, for lack of a better word, to tear down these unconstitutional entities that have stolen our country from us. It's not one level; it's all of them. But yes,
so Donna, this is what I see happening on the federal level. That a lot is happening really, really quickly, and I think we're going to continue. Yeah, I think we're going to continue to see a lot happening. I mean, yesterday I felt like posting twice. It's only Tuesday, guys, because there was so much going on. But and the public is more aware than ever about what is happening. So my question, my thought is, okay, every time I see something, I'm like, yes, do that in Michigan. Yes, do that in Michigan. But we don't have a President Trump in Michigan yet. So my question for you, Donna, especially because I know you've been involved in very knowledgeable about the elections and the battles going on in the court. And I use that term, battles, with an S, because there's more than one front there. You know more than anybody, perhaps. But based on what you know right now, do you think we have a chance at cleaning up the elections, or doing it enough that we can have a, if not clean, a decent shot at a governor election this next time around?
That is a good question. In the direction that we've gone in the past, the answer to that is no. We've already lost that process. However, when we look back, we lost the process. We've already lost it. But there are a few wild cards out there right now that are floating around, which I think that we have to focus in on, and realizing that we may not know exactly what's happening behind, such as some court cases that I know are going in a good direction, as well as some other things that are behind the scenes that are going on. Do I believe that we can take it back? Yes, I do. But it's going to require everyone in the state to decide that this is your problem. This is my problem. If we want this to be taken back, we're going to have to step in and be willing to, just everyday Americans who have never held office, to step forward, bring it back down to what it's supposed to be: limited legislature, limited power of the government, cut this thing back about 90%. And so it's not so overburdening for the people who are actually running it. Right now, you almost have to be a full-time person to even somewhat keep up with it, and they're not. So they're hiring people on the outside to tell them what to do, what to think, and what needs to be done. They're not representing the people. They're taking orders, and they're taking orders from a very illegal, unconstitutional group of usurpers who needs to be tried for treason. They've become unwitting accomplices to their theft. So do I think we have a shot at this? Absolutely. I absolutely think we do. But it's going to come down to only a couple of key things. And if those key things don't get put in place, then the answer is no.
Yeah. I think of it as, I have used this kind of analogy in chiropractic, that your body wants to heal itself, but it needs a little push. It's kind of like a car stuck on the ice. You just need a little push to get it to solid ground, and then it can take off on its own power. And I feel like that's where we are in Michigan, where the people, I don't know if the people are ready to take back control and rule as sovereigns per this conversation. But I think we're going to get there. And I think we need a little bit of some kind of help that's beyond the average Michiganian, that we need just that little bit of push, give us some traction, and then let us go. Like, I think that's what Trump is doing. We, as people, can't do away with the U.S. Department of Education. We needed a Trump in office to do that. I personally think we needed Donna Brandenburg in the office in Michigan, so that, because she would do the equivalent in Michigan and watch us go. And by the way, I have seen some things happening in other states where I think it was just Ohio, where they want to do away with their DOE there. So some other states are following Trump's example and trying to do the same thing in their state. And I think Michigan could do that if we had a good governor in place to do it. So
I think what's going to take is, if you think about this, like running this this state, this nation, like a service company on a service contract with we the people, that we're employed. The government needs to be looked at as a service that's employed, and if they fail, they get fired. Okay.
Yep.
And so what it's really going to take in Michigan is not the popularity contest, who's going to be flirting the most out there in the flirt fest that I've seen going on. It's going to be somebody who's going to function like a CEO in a company and say, you're fired, 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 because you failed. And to cut these policies back, we can't legislate more. We cannot go forward until we clean house.
yes,
And lay down the basis of, this is the line, this is the law, this is the Constitution, this is the law, this is what you're allowable to do. You step outside of that 1/2 of a millimeter and you're done. And holding them accountable. But it's going to take somebody who's not part of the system, because right now everybody that's in there is part of the system.
Yep.
They're all they're career politicians. All of them are. It is a selected. They have vetted them. They have selected them. They have installed them. Their money, their income is predicated on the fact that nothing changes, and that goes to the political consultants. That goes to the ones that have been in it for years, that have received money for this. Their very life blood of going forward in this economy is dependent on not one thing changes. You take one of the little Jenga sticks, I'm just going to use as an example, right? Out of the tower, and the whole damn thing falls. The only place that can happen is at the governor's level right now. And doing what President Trump is doing, he's pretty smooth about it, quite honestly. He's doing it so that they don't completely destroy America and have it turn into absolute chaos. Yeah. And it looks to me like a very, very smart, very metered step to back out of us. You don't get into a situation like this and expect to say, we're done with this in day one. Some of it can be. But what are you going to do with all the kids that are stuck within HHS? And the foster care system? What are you going to do with all the older people who are absolutely dependent on some of these systems with no way out if this thing fails? You think their kids are going to come to help them? Not likely.
And that's what I like about what he's doing. You know, he's working within that corporate structure. And so he has to do it step by step. But one of the things I noticed about his EOs is that, at least in some of them, he's saying, this is what I want to see. Now go give me a report on it so that we can take it to Congress. In other words, I want to see this happen because that's what the people elected me for. You go get a report made and detail it out so that we can easily then go to Congress with a bill and the people can decide in that fashion. He's not acting as a dictator. It might look like it sometimes. But also, just to throw this out there in this discussion, because we're talking about corporate versus de jure, somebody pointed out to me yesterday that the flag behind or next to Trump when he was at the press conference did not have a gold fringe on it. And I don't want to make a big fuss about it because I've seen it in different ways. So it may not be the meaning that we would like to see it as. I also noticed that the one in Congress when Tulsi Gabbard was approved had a gold fringe on it. So I don't know if there's still a meaning there. It's just something I noticed. I would love to see the gold fringe removed from all of our flags, but we have one step at a time.
Well, look at the structure both of people sitting in the seats, as well as the people on the outside who have made this their income, the political industry as their income. It was never intended to be this way. This is our duty to step up. We're supposed to have income from outside of this, not dependent on the system. Because if somebody's income is dependent solely on the system, guaranteed, they get asked to fall to their knees and kiss the ring of whoever's in front of them that's standing against the people. They're probably going to do it. It's a very unusual person that will walk away and not be swayed by money. Very, very unusual people. There's not many people that will do that. So if you've got people that don't have their own income, I mean, they're supposed to be sitting in the seats and have their own businesses and go home. It's not supposed to be full time. And when you've got industries like the whole consultants industry or that sort of thing, I am highly suspect on that. They are not going to do the right thing. I can tell you that if push comes to shove, they're going to protect their own behinds and their own interests. That's what we've become accustomed to. So to actually write this nation on what it stands, we are going to have somebody that comes in there like a CEO, like President Trump, who can actually make their own money or figure out a way to MacGyver their way through anything without being under threat of somebody else saying, well, you know what, we're going to take your funding. Okay, good luck with that. I didn't need your funding in the first place. Keep your dirty freaking money. Keep your money that you've stolen from the people, because now we've got full time to plan your evil demise and get every single son of that back, throw it on the table and distribute it between Americans. And that's what needs to happen. We need to get somebody that's in there that says, we're done playing ball with you. The accountability is actually starting right now. And give people a warning shot to either turn themselves either on the right side. I think we should seize every asset of any of these globalists that there's out there. They need to be absolutely seized, liquidated, and turned back to the people. So when you see people that have $21 million sitting over there in Singapore and Deutsche Bank and all this, which is what we've seen, it's time to seize those assets that were ill-gotten gain by the theft of the taxpayers' money, their homes, their holdings, and everything else in the process of absolutely bringing this thing to toe. Put the money, you don't want to talk reparations. Everybody's like, no, let's not talk reparations. I think we should talk reparations, but it's not to, a protected class of citizens such as Native Americans. I was born here. I'm a Native American. What other country are you going to assign me to? Somewhere out in the atmosphere? Probably not. We're all Native Americans if we're born here. And so you throw it on the table, you cut all of this pity me, I'm a victim crap that's going on across the nation, because that's exactly what we're seeing. Oh, pity me, I want more money. Wah, I'm better than you. Sorry, we're supposed to be one nation here under God. And unfortunately, part of the indoctrination that's happened is to say that there are winners and losers. That's really not true. And in fact, there was a great study that I need to talk to you about that I saw from somebody years ago. She was a friend of mine who was going to U of M, and the professor gave everybody a certain amount of money and said, okay, go out and make as much money as you can and bring it in, and we'll talk about what you've done. So they all went out and they made their own money, and they came back, and for 3 weeks, he listened to the reports that came back from what they experimented with. Now, mind you, these are college students. They probably have no real life experience, zero. They know one slice of life, but they don't have all the slices of life. And so they go out and they do their best. The professor was absolutely brilliant and basically said, said when they all got done, he painfully watched them do this and painfully handed them their tails and said, I'm failing all of you, because he said, you didn't learn the lesson. The lesson was, is if you can all work together, if you would have pooled your contacts, your time, your effort, and your expertise in different areas, if you'd broken down the silos and gone to the engineering department, the business department, all of that, you would have made 20 times the amount of money that you had doing it on your own. And
Fired.
What's that?
I said you're fired.
Fired.
Because that's exactly what Trump did on the TV show. He had them working in groups sometimes, and they would compete against each other, but they had to learn to work together.
Well, and so I mean, to look at this, to get this back together, we're going to have to look at this as I would love to see experts in industry step forward that know what the actual working is, not for their own gain, but for their expertise, maybe being on a council of some sort, not like appointed ones that work for the government that are getting paid. It'd be part of your duty that right now, all we have is cartels running this nation, and it's not the drug cartels. It's the
township associations.
The township associations. It's the cartels that work for the railroad. That the regulatory entities are cartels, and they exist to stop accessing. This is part of the problem, and we're never going to fix it unless we get this under control. But are these people whose incomes are dependent on the system going to say it's time to stop this? Therein is the crux of the problem right there. It's the funding. It's the money. You get rid of the funding. You get rid of the money. Planned Parenthood goes away. The trans surgeries go away. They destroy. You get rid of the let's just say the trade associations and the unions, like the teachers union even. Do you realize that we can buy insurance for our employees for like about a third of the cost of what the teachers unions and some of these other unions pay for that? So they're taking the dues in, but they're paying an elevated rate of maybe $12 an hour for what an employer can pay for. And so it tied into the insurance companies. This is a tangled mess that once we start out going, you're fired, nullification, it gets real simple real fast. But any of these consultants, you watch Greenlee resigned from the chair race the other day. What did he say right after that? He was on his way to DC, like we're all supposed to be really impressed with that. Fantastic. I'm not. You just showed your swamp creature tendencies right there.
I'd like to add something onto that. I had spoken to Ms. Sean Maddock when I first started Page to Approve. This was probably back in 2021. And Detroit, is the largest populated city in Michigan, totally Democrat, like a big monopoly going on over there. I asked Ms. Sean Maddock, how come we don't do something with Detroit? Why the Republicans don't really try to do something, anything? And her response was, well, we don't even bother with Detroit because it's a waste of our time. And it almost feels like there's a deal, a pact that's been made between Democrats and Republicans. It's like, where's she getting this ideology from? Was it the Democrats control the large cities and Republicans control everything else? So there's kind of a close number when it comes to voting. So we keep this first 4 years the Democrats run, and then the next 4 years the Republicans run. And it's like no matter who we vote in, it's always the same thing. Nothing changes. It's like there's this relationship. I mean, the cities would be the first thing we should be taking over. If it's the 20 largest cities, less than 80 counties that got the popular vote, that shows that Hillary Clinton, if we had a popular vote, she would have won. We need to take over these cities.
Let me interject something there. As the big city, I think Detroit's population, Detroit proper, is 500,000 people. They've got us so duped into these population centers, even some of them, because it's like part of Detroit looks like, downtown Beirut after they've been bombing them. I mean, it's really sad. And the people that are there have been they don't have a voice. Nobody's listening to them. Nobody's trying to make it better. They're just kind of like sitting out there. I mean, if you've driven around Detroit, you can go right where Dan Gilbert and Stephen Ross have done all their big developments. And you look at the big developers, Ron Weiser, all of these people who have put hundreds of millions of dollars, which I digress, but we're going to go back to the pacts and the unconstitutional treaties and all these other nonsense documents that have been drafted to give people a way to make big money off the taxpayers to the detriment of the people. Ron Weiser's poster child of what shouldn't be done. Ron Weiser, who ran as a co-chair of Mashawn Maddock, and such. And we really need to look at this seriously and, listen to their words, but also research what's behind them. And all you have to do is look at their would the Republican Party ever allow Donna Brandenburg to actually run a clean race under it?
No.
They're scared shitless of me. And they were the ones that were part of the uniparty that had to get rid of Donna Brandenburg. And I'm going to tell you what, there's a report that's going to drop that's going to probably shake everybody to their core on what actually happened. You don't know the story. Nobody knows the story. It's coming out, and it's going to be brutal on which side it's at. It wasn't just Nestle who paid the signature gatherers over $1 million and her wife through an NGO. It's much more insidious and evil than what you can possibly imagine. All I can say is you don't have a vote. And it's going to get worse unless people decide to step up and take this thing back. And it's local action equals national impact. But if you don't get the right governor in the next race, you're done.
We need a governor that's going to have a business mind and work with the counties. Because if everything's being run,
understand the law.
Yeah. If everything's being run as a business, then we need to have somebody in office that's going to view we the people as the shareholders of the corporations.
Absolutely. Right now, we got a communication.
Under general law, we're not self-governing. They set up the framework for us, and the way it's turned out is that the corporations and the state government, they're the shareholders. They're the ones that's profiting off of us. We've just turned into a commodity for them to make money off of us. That goes totally against what the founding fathers had set up. So we need to get somebody in office going to recognize us as the shareholders and recognize some of these elements to this other side of the coin that we can actually self-govern by. If we get out from the general law where we're not the shareholders, we get someone in where we're self-governing, we're the shareholders, and we can protect our liberties.
If the parties don't get their heads out of their behinds and stop serving the people and picking candidates and taking the dark money and the PAC money, I would say that we should have them designated as terrorist organizations.
Ooh, she said it right there on BNN.
I said it on BNN. These organizations are terrorist organizations, and we should all take the oath against any threat, both domestic and foreign or domestic, as a terrorist organization or organizations that have usurped the will of the people in the United States of America. And I'm going to tell you right now, what I see in this state and the absolute distraction and disinformation from the political parties, it's not just the ones in the seats. It's all of them at this point in time. And the useful idiots that refuse to step out and say, this is wrong, we're going to do it the right way. Now, there's a lot of people in the parties. I'm not saying it. It's just like when we talked about Israel today.
Right.
I don't have any problems with the people of Israel. I have no problems with the Republicans that are in there trying to help. The structure that these organizations have gone under to undermine the people. How many times have you heard any of these people sitting in the legislature go in to defend Trump? They didn't. They watched him being eaten alive. Well, his rights were violated by a absolutely sham election in 2020. And until we go back and write 2020, 2022, and 2020 and get this thing figured out, because we've got absolute proof, we've already lost it. So the warning is there. We free thinkers, like we, those people that cannot be controlled, tried to tell people before the jab, you're going to die. This isn't okay. They don't get to tell you how your business works, what your body is, that you have to have a shot in order to be employed. And look what's happened. They've killed millions through this. Well, I'm Donna Brandenburg. I'm going to say the warning shot again right now. As a free thinker who will not be swayed by people's opinions, but look at the evidence of what it is. If you don't right now make a decision to vote in the right governor, you're going to get your behinds handed to you. And that doesn't mean that it's determined by the political parties. That means that person has got to be chosen because it is truly appointed by God, that people vote their conscience, not fear, not, split the vote, we're going to go under. That was one heck of a psychological psyop, and people bought into it. And we're going to have to walk away off the mind farm created by political operatives, FBI informants that have infiltrated CIA, Mossad, GCHQ.
Donna, you mentioned psyops. I got to say this before I lose that train of thought of psyops. I see a psyop that's going on in America right now. Isn't sanctuary cities being stigmatized as something very bad that we want to get rid of? That's a deceptive trick. The only thing wrong with what the cities is that they're run by these mafias that are, Democrat-run cities. They're mafias.
The problem is that they're only giving sanctuary to criminals, and they're not paying attention to the law.
We need righteous people to run these cities, to get in there and get in the city councils. That's why I got to give a shout out to Ramon Jackson in Detroit and Pastor Sewell. I got a chance to know that.
Pastor Sewell. He's good. He's a nice guy.
Pastor Sewell and Ramon Jackson want to get into the city council and clean out the mafia. We have to support them and their efforts in Detroit. Hey, let's get in Detroit and let's take back our state.
Well, like I said when I was in Detroit, because I actually went to Detroit and I talked to people and I wanted to know the problems. I didn't cower away. They loved me. I had a great time there. And it was, and I looked at them and I was at the one street and I was making a business evaluation of this street. And I basically looked at that and said, if I had probably even, I'm going to say less than, I'm not going to give you a number right now, I guess. But instead of having all this money go into the corporations, which is corporate welfare and theft, they are not, we don't have free market. We don't have free competition because they're absolutely annihilating small business in the cities and such. If we just, eliminated that lack of competition, the corporations would shrivel up and die right away because they would literally lose their advantage. They could not compete, and local business would absolutely annihilate them. And so
here's the big problem.
I've got 5 minutes and I have to go because I have a meeting. So I appreciate you guys staying on and talking about this, but go ahead.
The one thing we have to recognize is these large cities, Democrat cities, they've made a deal with the World Economic Forum. It's something they're bringing in. These mayors are bringing in C40 cities, and that's these smart cities. Okay, East Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Lansing, Detroit, Ann Arbor, Flint. They've all signed up as C40 cities. I encourage everybody to learn what that is, because the only way we're going to get out from under that and take over is to get rid of this general law that we're under, that they're dominating. They're dominating the general law. We don't have any. We need to learn history.
Well, yeah, thanks for coming back, Karen. And I really thank you guys. Let's say a quick prayer because I got a meeting that's going to be starting here in just like a few minutes and I'm already late. So
can you please include my mama in your prayer?
I will. Thank you. And I appreciate you recognizing that I said it, that the political parties, if they're taking PAC money, dark money, we don't know the sources that they're from, that are funding them. They have become a domestic terrorist organization with collusion with foreign entities. There you go. And you're right, Karen, I said it. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for this day, for Karen, and for all the wonderful people that have decided to come on here and share their knowledge, like Curtis and Ralph and Bill and all of our good friends out there. We pray for Karen's mom today. We know she's having some health issues, and we ask for you to help her and help the doctors as she goes through and undergoes treatment forward, and give Karen complete peace in this, as well as everybody out there who is also facing similar circumstances with health issues of those they love, as maybe of themselves. We ask for your protection, your healing mercies, and that you would come alongside of them to give them peace and calm during all situations, because their trust is in you. We thank you so very much for everything you've done for us, and we thank you for guiding us through these very complex issues, for helping us to do the right thing as you carry us, giving us your strength and your discernment and your wisdom. It all comes from you. We are nothing. We are just vessels and we are willing to be used by you in any way necessary to right this horrible situation, because we are here as servants of you, and we want to serve you in your kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. We will do whatever it is you ask us to do. Just give us the feet to walk the path that you lay ahead of us. And we love you very much. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. All right, boys and girls, got to say, and this is my protest for the 2022 election right there. Ding, 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 ding. I'm protesting the 2022 election. Please go to BrandenburgForGovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who's ever non-conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I'd like to talk to the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, in cowboy boots. We'll see who wears it better. And there you go. So with that said, God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. Be tough as nails out there, guys, and unwavering on the law. The emotional nonsense is what's taken us captive. It's not a popularity contest. It is, what is the law? What are you willing to give up for this nation? What are you willing to stand for? And that's what separates the true patriots who just talk and actually are willing to do something. Think for yourself. Don't let them take your mind, because that's what fifth generation warfare is all about. And that's the war we're in right now. So thank you guys for being on. Hang on, I'm going to end the stream, and we'll say a few minutes, and then we'll go on our day. Tomorrow, let's see. Jonathan Cagle tomorrow. And so we'll talk to you and see you tomorrow.